everyone. I am your host for today, Britt Bartolini, an Enterprise Account Executive here at MaintainX, and I want to welcome you to another edition of The Wrench Factor, where we explore technologies and innovations really shaping the future of industrial asset management. And here we discuss the biggest challenges facing our frontline workers and share insights of ways to achieve best-in-class operations. And so with that, I'm really excited for the conversation that we're going to be having today. We're going to be counting down the top 10 signs your maintenance program might be a little off. Whether your operations is humming along or feels like one missed part away from complete chaos, these are the red flags and real life moments that our team has seen and that you may recognize. So with that, I am excited to welcome our guests today, two of my favorite people at MaintainX. We have Chris and Tyler. How are you guys doing?
Well, thanks for having me, Britt.
Hey, thanks for having us. Excited to join the discussion here. And coming off of a great conference over in Fort Worth over the last couple of days, most of these topics and what we're going to cover resonate and from what our partners over there are saying too. So happy to jump into it.
Yep. I'm actually here at the NAMES conference in Fort Worth as well. And I'm reviewing for this conversation today. It's just so amazing how much these are the actual topics everyone's talking about on the front line. So let's start with number 10, right? Your team relies on things like calls and radios and paper work orders, or worse, hieroglyphics, right? Everyone knows that systems involve multiple ways of communicating. But what's worse is if all you're doing is shouting across the room, "Hey, Steve, can you come fix this?" Right? That might be a problem. So, CMAC, how do you address that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's called analog chaos. These moments do add up over time, not because people aren't doing their best or really trying, but the tools just aren't keeping up with the pace of operations. So we're hearing more of my customers ask, "Hey, what's our plan to connect the team to the floor?" And that's the beginning of the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got to start the conversation somewhere, right? That brings me to number 9, right? No one knows how much downtime is actually costing you. And there's a big difference between feeling the pain of downtime, right? Production's not up, we're not making things, and then being able to quantify it. I was just talking to a customer that said starting to track downtime in an Excel sheet led to them understanding that it was actually costing them about $15,000 a week. But there's better ways to track it out there. So Tyler, how do you help customers with that?
Yeah, so I think the first thing what we really start to do is we look at just getting the basics right of just getting the downtime metrics, measuring the impact, and then being able to extrapolate that. And then we can start looking at justifications or priority for investment overall. So one of the things is just getting back to the basics, getting in there and saying, what is our downtime and true cost of maintenance?
Yeah, absolutely. And being able to report up, right? Everyone cares about the downtime across the organization, but you got to be able to track it somewhere and have that visibility. So that leads us to SOPs. Number 8, SOPs are kept in a binder older than your interns. If your techs are still just thumbing through binders, you're wasting valuable wrench time and trees. I knew you'd love that. CMAC, what are your thoughts there?
Absolutely. That's called sneaker net, where you get your sneakers on and you walk the paper around from machine to machine. But all kidding aside, that type of tribal knowledge is absolute gold.
Yeah.
But if it's not captured, it's literally just going to walk right out the door. So my clients, they're actually starting to see this as a business risk,
Yeah.
especially with the shortage of unskilled labor. How do you get a new hire up to speed quickly? So they're really focusing on globalizing the standards or the SOPs, but not just standardizing everything because everybody already does that. But how do you distribute that? And then equally as important, how do you pull the old one away? Because if you go to a workstation, there's always a little folder of papers. They have all the SOPs, but there might be SOPs in there from like 1980. I've personally seen it. Even McKinsey cited organizations with standardized work processes see 50% fewer errors and compliance violations. But again, how do you pull the old one away? and then put the
Yeah.
new one in without blasting everybody on an email. And I'll say the word memo only because I'm a little older now. So no one uses that word anymore. But
Yeah.
really, the SOPs, how you deliver it, and then how do you remove the old one? That's really the big question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, my background, my family's in manufacturing. My stepdad's someone who's about to retire from a maintenance role, right? And he has everything in his brain. He has it in his phone if he has to fabricate a part. But if he leaves tomorrow, where does that go, right? And more than that, this is something that keeps coming up at names right now is kids today don't even know how to do cursive, right? So looking at a binder, they've been on iPads for like the last 10 years. And so to inspire that generation to come in and really tackle and start using the same things that my retiring dad is, there's an opportunity there for them to learn from each other, but also capture that tribal knowledge in a digital way and empower that new employee to digitize it with them, right? So interesting. All right. So number 7, you keep running out of critical spare parts at the worst possible time. Not that there's ever a good time to run out of a spare part, but you had a machine go down and you realize that it's somewhere, probably in my grumpy old man's toolbox that no one's allowed to touch, right? A $14 part once cost one of my clients an entire day of production. And it was simply because they just didn't know where it was. So Tyler, how do we address that?
Yeah, we've all been there, and really, it's just not about tracking inventory and what's on the shelf, but really, it's about getting that understanding about what's being consumed against what assets and at what times. We were with a customer last week actually for an opportunity down in Houston, and one of the challenges that they were facing at the most basic level was what critical spare parts do we have on the shelf at any given time, and getting away from the Excel spreadsheets and the notebooks and the clipboards, and they were using their radios and radioing back and forth across the facility in order to see constantly what critical spares were there. So the running out at the worst possible time was something that they were experiencing. It's something that everybody that's in process and discrete manufacturing is always concerned about, right? Do we have this? What's broken inside the supply chain? So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, go ahead.
No, please. I was agreeing.
No, we're good. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think I love that you brought up that you're on site, like really, really seeing what the client's going through and their pain, right? And parts seem to be the easiest ROI for us whenever we're working with clients, but it is important for us to go walk the floor with them and see what their process is like to be able to make recommendations of how we can make this better for them. Parts is a low-hanging fruit for a lot of clients. Which brings me to number 6. Your last digital transformation failed, and now no one wants to try again. That last CMMS you rolled out, everyone was excited in the beginning, and then it never got adopted. And now, Grumpy Paul gives you a side eye whenever you say you're going to go get a new software for them. So, CMAC, how do we address that?
Yeah, flavor of the month. Nothing hurts your leadership cap, aptitude, how you're viewed in the organization is when you have an initiative roll out and it fails because you only get so many of these matches, like you only get so many of these tries. So one of the things that we do with our customers, or I focus on, is what are the small wins? How do we involve the front line? And then how do we grab those wins and move them forward? Like I mentioned, one of my customers just wanted to focus on break fix. That was a big win because they were just going from fire to fire. And they could say, hey, we want to PM everything. But yes, let's focus on the critical equipment first. Capture those break fixes. We're able to easily capture downtime just by focusing on a few key pieces of equipment. And then now we have that particular data, we can start building a PM plan to address those. And we're going to pull in the other assets and start getting the critical spares as well. But knowing where you're at, where you're going to start, involve your team. It's no longer optional, but you're able to build off of those wins. And that's actually how we go from one production line to a department, from the department to the plant. And then from the plant, we're doing an enterprise rollout. So it's
Yeah.
finding those really small wins and building off of them instead of this huge monumental approach from a top-down perspective.
Yeah. I love, love, love that. I'm a big fan of the Kaizen way of really trying something, finding little areas where we can make an improvement and growing that bigger across the organization, and really involving the frontline worker in that experimental phase, right? Getting excited of kind of running a scientific experiment on the floor and being proactive about what you can change to make things better, and getting a seat at the table whenever you talk to leadership about those changes, right? Uh,
Kaizen, isn't that Batman and Robin? Holy
yeah,
Kaizen, Batman. No, no.
it's
Maybe
a
a
special karate. Yeah, just like that. I'm a big fan of the Toyota production system, and that's a part of it. So, I guess that brings us to the next point, number 5. Maintenance is only brought in when something breaks. I had a client who had a really great graphic of this, and it was a maintenance guy with a belt tied around his waist, swinging in like Tarzan to put out fires. And he said, "I didn't get in this industry because I want to put out fires. I want to be a problem solver." Right. And we don't want maintenance to constantly feel like an emergency response team. We want them to feel like they're doing things preventatively. So, Tyler, what do you say to that?
Yeah, look, this is a total change in the mindset and a commitment from leadership on this. Last night at dinner, we were having dinner with the largest manufacturer of a particular product in North America, in their vertical, and they are very, very well respected with their production processes. And last night, when I was talking to their head of operations, he said, "Look, we had to fundamentally change the mindset of where and how we were going to do work." Prior to us really committing to the tracking of the assets and moving into preventative maintenance, it was always reactive. There's always a fire. No one's ever leaving and truly leaving work or any kind of capacity. And so really what they said is, we're going to look at how we're doing it. We're going to build the bench of talent that's going to come in here and do this. And we're going to build the right tech stack in order to facilitate that moving forward. So really there was a cultural shift, there was a leadership change, there was a mindset change that went with it, and the team has come with them all the way on this journey. And so now, as they're doing it, and when they've shifted this mindset, going back to some of the previous comments, it's now they're able to really focus on their production, right? Now they're really able to improve their throughput, their yield, and when throughput and yield are optimized, cash flow is working and coming in strong, and so then they can continue to invest and reward their team appropriately.
I love what you said there. It's such a hot topic here right now of the tech stack, but involving the humans that have to use the tech in the process of evaluating it and implementing it, and then you get more buy-in that way, right?
Right.
Which is something that I guess relates to number 4, and that is AI and predictive maintenance. Hot topic right now. Everyone wants to think about AI, but the data that they're collecting is still on paper. And everyone knows things like AI, it's only as good as the information you're putting into it. And we want to get better at predictive maintenance. But if you're still putting things on paper or an Excel sheet, you're not actually getting that integrity of data to start on those programs. So, CMAC, how are we helping our clients overcome that?
Um, you know, like you alluded to, you actually have to have data in order for the AI bots that are going to take over the world to be able to do their magic, right? So it does start with clean, structured data, information in, and then from there, if you think about just capturing break fix and capturing that digitally, starting
Yeah.
there, building out some PM processes. We have systems in place that can actually look at work order history, and then the OEM manuals, and then the goal is for the machine to tell you when to service it before it breaks, where the machine is actually talking to you, telling you when it needs to be serviced. But you have to start where you have to have a digital record first, and Excel doesn't count as a digital record or Google Keep, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's on the phone, but all that being said, parlaying previously off of starting with the small wins, starting with break fix, working on your critical lines or your critical pieces of equipment, developing the PMs, and now you actually have good structured data to start the really cool stuff, which is predictive maintenance.
Yeah. I actually think some of the really cool stuff is also in the way that it empowers your frontline workers to get to information faster, right? So instead of going through an OEM manual that's 158 pages, you get to now use AI to tell you how do I address this, and then our AI actually links directly in the PDF where it found that information. And so now you're able to upskill some of your techs who are coming in a little more green quicker, and you can move them from a level 2 tech to a level 1 tech in a shorter amount of time, and make sure that that's repeatable as you think about your training, as you think about your onboarding, right? And that's the really exciting thing for me. Yeah. I guess that I keep laying myself up really great. Your number 3 is
You're
your
your
most.
own segue.
Well, I am my own best hype man too sometimes. So here we are. Number 3, your most experienced techs are retiring and no one knows what's in their head. So going back to my dad's example, Henri Paul knows where his tools are and what he needs to get the job done, and no one better touch it, but he retires tomorrow and all that goes with him, right? So Tyler, how are we addressing that?
Oh man, I got to tell you something. This is probably one of my more passionate things, whether it's inside business or outside of business. But it's really developing young people as they're coming into the industry and helping give them the tools in order to be successful. So one of the best ways that I've seen this is when we are really pairing those inexperienced guys that are coming in, pairing them with someone that's been there for a while. Maybe they're a gray beard, maybe they're a legacy individual, maybe they're the SME for it, whatever your descriptor word of choice is for it. But it's really, we want to capture that information and learn the tips and tricks of that particular facility, of that particular equipment type. We saw this. I mean, this is exactly how we did it when I was inside the Army. We ran around the world doing a variety of missions and other things, but really bringing in the junior leaders and pairing them with the senior leaders. So that way they could really understand the why behind the what, right? Everybody really wants to understand the whys behind the what they're doing. So that way they can move faster, right? And understand. We did the exact same thing in oil and gas, as we ran around with all of our valve portfolios, our rotating equipment. And, we also do that here inside the software world, right? So inside the tech space, we're constantly bringing in new folks and the mentorship side. At dinner last night, the other company that was joining us, this is one of the great things that they offer too, right? And so where they bring in the new grads and they put them through their leadership programs and the rotational, I think that is a phenomenal component of their onboarding. And they're really investing in the team, right? And so when you think about the investment in the team, that team will be able to take that and they're able to return that investment inside their work productivity. So I think whether it's partnering with trade schools or other places, or maybe some of the junior colleges in the area or at the university level with the mechanical engineers that are in particular that are coming out right now, what we're doing is we're improving their literacy of the field. We're giving them the tools in order to be successful. And again, we're keeping that person front and center who we're developing, right? And we're just giving them another tool in their toolkit, which is the technology to be successful. It's people led, technology enabled, right? It's not technology led, people enabled. So we have to get that order right.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I love the rotational program as they explained it to us last night. One of the questions I asked them as a younger generation coming in is, what inspired you to come work for this company and why do you stay? And it's the challenges that they're actually seeing in manufacturing. They saw themselves being represented in the people who came to their schools and recruited them, but the challenges related a lot to what they actually went to school for. One was food science, one was an engineer, and they thought they would choose a different path, but they got to solve bigger problems using that education that all of us were encouraged to get. And I personally am so passionate about inspiring kids a lot younger, at a younger age, to get involved and then feel like they're part of the problem solving by saying, hey, I want to hear your story. I want to hear how you've been doing this for 30 years and tell me how I can make this better, because I still have this drive to apply what I'm excited about from school into this new position. So I think that's something that's really exciting that's happening in the industry right now too, as we face these labor challenges. Okay. Number two, your frontline teams don't use the maintenance system because it's too complicated. If the system takes longer to use than the job itself, get out of my way. And this is something I talk about on almost all of my decks. Is my dad, whenever I told him I was coming to work for MaintainX, he's like, that's for corporate. For me, for my job, I need to know, what do I need to get done today? Do I have everything I need to get it done? And is what you're asking me to do easy? Everything else, not for me. So how do we overcome that with our clients, CMAC?
It just has to be simple. Whatever you pick, um, if it's not simple, the team on the floor, they're not going to use it. One of my VPs told me a while ago. He said, "Chris, one of the reasons I really love working with you is it's so quick to actually capture a work event." He had actually shared with me, to your point, that if it takes 30 minutes to fix but 15 minutes to document, they're never going to document it. And his issue is he was actually losing the documentation. Remember AI and all that cool stuff and having a plan and Industry 4.0. He was losing 40% of all of his work events just because they weren't being captured because it wasn't simple and easy. So it has to be very, very simple. The another one of my maintenance techs, he was like, "Hey, Chris, I don't get paid to work on a computer, right?" And he goes, "I get paid to fix stuff." And one of the things that he was so appreciative is being able to create a work order on the fly, just using a phone or a tablet in about 8 to 10 seconds. But the long and short of it is you actually need the team to use the software for all of the rest of the system for your KPIs, maintenance, and reliability to actually work. You need a team to use your system for AI to even be beneficial because, again, it has to be digitized. So the adoption actually drives the data, and then the data drives the insight. And that's really the path forward, but it has to be simple. It has to be simple.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that example. No one got into this industry because they love being a pencil pusher. They love sending emails to their boss at the end of the day, detailing every single thing they did. I was explaining it like a recipe. If you're cooking and you write down every step as you go, you are going to get that recipe better than if you cook the dinner, eat the dinner, do the dishes, and then try to go back and write it all down, right? So we need to capture that in a better way and get them to use a system that's really easy so they don't feel like they are trying to remember the recipe at the end. And that brings us to number one. Drum roll if I knew how to do that. Your process hasn't changed since flip phones were cool. We are probably the only ones last generation to remember flip phones. We've always done it this way. It's the most frequent thing that we hear. It's always been this way. We're not going to change. We don't want maintenance to get left behind, though. We want you to have a seat at the table as far as production goes. So how do you address that, Tyler?
Yeah, hey, maintenance, just like our phones and everything else that we have, is evolving incredibly fast. The equipment is becoming more complex. A truck today is completely different than a truck bought 10 years ago, right? The technology inside of it is requires a different maintenance period. All the components are different. So, anyways, the equipment and is changing. Our maintenance has to change, right? So it's not just about fixing things when they break, but we have to be able to leverage the data that's coming off of that asset now that it's connected, right? So what we want to do is be able to connect to that asset. We want to be able to anticipate the failures. We want to be able to forecast our production schedules. So that way then we can take an asset offline in order to optimize our throughput and our yield. Again, just always bringing it back to how do we improve, production. How do we improve our yield at the end of the day? So really it's about optimizing based off the data that's coming from that asset. I don't know. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, interesting. When we started MaintainX, one of the trends that we noticed is you could no longer buy a flip phone. We literally were waiting for people's phones to break because they couldn't be replaced. Now you can, for grandma, you can go get a big numbered
The
flip
jitterbug.
phone, right? Yeah. That's it. Plug there for jitterbug, but really, it's a new age here. we actually wanted to make something that was cool for the maintenance team on the floor, because many times they're actually left out of the corporate decisions. Now they're incorporated when it comes to numbers, but from their workday, the how do we make it simple and easy and fun and just cool? How do we make it cool for them, the men and women that have to do all the hard work every day on the floor? So that was really our particular focus when we started MaintainX.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Gartner did a study recently and said by 2026, 50% of asset intense organizations will have moved from reactive to predictive maintenance, at least in theory, in their strategies, reducing the unplanned downtime by 20 to 30%. Whenever I hear that from a client that they want to participate in this, predictive maintenance movement, I always am like, how are you defining that? It has to come from data sets. And if your people have always been doing it this way, then the data stream actually stops with your frontline workers. So we got to get them excited about participating in this revolution. And to do that, it has to be really simple. So
I think it's funny that Gardner just predicted a prediction. I'm going to start getting into that business, by the way. Gardner, we love you, by the way. Thank you for the magic project.
I love it. I love it. Well, if you want more CMAC jokes, please give MaintainX a call. No, I want to thank you all for joining us today on another great episode of The Wrench Factor. I also want to thank Tyler and CMAC for just always having the best conversations and really enlightening me on my career journey here and participating in this. Yeah.
Thank
okay.
you, Brett.
Thanks, Brett.
I was like,
All right.
yeah, you guys thank me. There's also going to be, if you guys want more information, please feel free to reach out to any of us. If you want some links to the studies and research that we shared, happy to share that post-show. And we will be sharing a link after this, just helping. It's a practical guide of how to really think about your maintenance maturity. So we hope to see you guys again.